I was in the army, like, where the sort of macho image, like, is there, you know. But see, when my depression really got into me, it strips every ounce of positivity. I don't know if you ever suffered from depression yourself, but if you did, you know exactly what that means. But it takes everything positive out of your being. It just it it overcomes everything that's the norm in your life. Everything, and I mean everything. Eating, drinking, sleeping, you know, thinking, you know, the outdoors, you know. It takes everything out here. It's like someone sticks uh, a Hoover into you and takes all that goodness that's in your being out away. And then if you get the depths of depression and you become suicidal, you know, oh God, you know, it's not, it's not a good place.
And take me back to that time. Was that around, I think you may have mentioned before, that was around 5 or 6 years ago. What was going on in your life at the time?
Well, I would have suffered from depression since the middle of the 1980s. And I notice I tend to get bouts of depression, and I will also suffer bouts of anxiety as well. And I think my journey to grow was twofold. One, I wanted to keep in touch with mental awareness, mental well-being. Plus, I wanted to give back what I learned down through the years, and where my journey with mental illness brought me. You know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I suppose, if you want to call it that. Because someone described to me in the military once that mental illness is like it's like going through a minefield, and you're afraid to step here and you're afraid to step there, and sometimes you want to go forward but you step backwards, and sometimes there's an explosion, you know, and and it was a very good way of describing what mental illness can be, what depression can be, you know. And I find uh, what I'm doing in Grow is I'm learning off all the other people, and I'm also giving. So I'm giving from my experience uh, and wisdom that I've gained down through the years. So I'm giving that back, and that's really where I find myself in Grow. I'm helping people with their journey, and they're helping me with my journey.
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
and at that time, Seamus, did you feel that things had come to a head when you came across Grow?
But not at that time, but
Okay.
before. I mean, there's 3 or 4 stages in my life where I was suicidal, where I wanted to die. To me, it's the loneliest place a human being could be. Uh, when you know, and that would be the depths of depression and despair. It's you know, it's I would describe it like it wasn't Seamus Kelly that wanted to die, but it was the pain that I had inside, and the only way that I could see to end that pain was to die by suicide. And then, for some reason, I didn't, and I came out of that then, and I was, I got angry. I got angry with my higher power. I got angry with the world, um, and I had to battle with that. I had to struggle with that. Uh, okay, I didn't die. So what you want me here for? what's my place in this world? And that was a very hard struggle. And I remember someone uh, that I knew that had mental illness as well, and he says to me, "Do you read books?" And I'm not a book reader, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, and I said, "Well, not really." "Well, I'm going to bring you in a book," he says. "I want you to read it." And the book was called Man's Search for Meaning. And it was from one of the Holocaust survivors.
Okay.
And when he came out from the Holocaust and survived, he was thinking the same. I've survived this, so now where's my life going? What is my purpose in life? And I was struggling with that too. What is my purpose? And I did struggle with that for a number of years. I I struggled with my place in society, if you want to call it. And now I actually know what it is. I found it. And when I went to grow, I actually discovered, yeah, this is my place. I meant to be here. I meant to be talking about my experiences in life. And I'm meant to be sharing those experiences with people who are on their journey and maybe only starting out. The new people coming in the door, I love to meet them, and I encourage people, especially in the times we're in. You know, we're coming through a pandemic. People are struggling with their mental well-being. There's so much going on in people's minds, in their bodies, in their souls, that they're struggling. They're struggling to get out of bed. They're struggling with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there, and I know what that's like. I know what it's like going to bed and wishing I don't wake up in the morning. I know what it's like waking up the next morning and wishing that I hadn't have done that. So I've been on that journey. I felt the pain. I know what it's like. And as I said at the start, it can be the loneliest place in the world when you're suffering with your mental illness. But in Grow, I discovered we're like a family. We've all come on the same type of journey. Some have been different than others, but we've ended up in the same place, and we're in Grow. And grow is a great word because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to grow in our mind, in our body, in our souls. And I keep telling the people in Grow, the world needs us. The world today needs people like us. We are the leaders. We know what it's like. We travel the journey from our inner being, and we're projecting that out to the world. And when you actually think about that, it's actually a huge positive thing. You know,
Yeah.
it's a huge positive thing to be doing.
Yeah.
We're helping the world. So you might come in the door in the depths of despair, but hopefully you'll go out maybe with a positive thought. Yes, I'm doing something and I'm going to be helping the world. But again, you start with yourself. And that's what we do in Grow.
And James, can you remember the when you say you walk in the door of a group meeting, that first meeting, and you're in the depths of despair, and can you remember what that felt like and what it was in that first meeting or the first 3 or 4 meetings that you felt at home there? You felt this is going to work for me.
There's a structure there. And each meeting, more or less is the same.
Mm-hmm.
We're working out a blue book. We start off, we read the 12-step program,
Yes.
uh, where everyone gets a chance to talk about their week.
Mm-hmm.
Remember I mentioned the word task.
Yes.
They say, and even if You know, like we say, for example, if I say, well, next week I'm going to clean all the windows, which I put off for a while, and I don't do it. Well, the world won't end because you haven't done it, and maybe you take it on and do it for the next week. Things like that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
It could be to change the way you're thinking, you
Okay.
know, to be more positive
Yes.
as opposed to thinking negative,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah.
Now, from experience, that's easier said than done. But when you actually think about it, if you're thinking positive thoughts, you're in a better place. And that would be the reason for that.
Yeah. And you described the minefield of life, and that you feel, if you step in one particular place, an explosion might happen, or if you, and when you're feeling like that, does that almost make you stop taking steps because the fear of what you're going to step on, or what's going to blow up in front of you means you almost retract?
Yeah, I think it's probably hard for someone that hasn't suffered mental illness to understand that concept.
Okay.
But depression, for example, that would be a symptom. I would call it a symptom of the state you're in.
Okay.
The the fear, anxiety, there's anger, there's guilt, there's all those things. And you're talking about, as we're doing here, we're talking about grow and a support for people who suffer.
Mhm.
I was walking my dog as I do every morning, and I go out and I go down to a certain spot down by the river, and I'm looking at the colour of the leaves on the trees, and I'm looking at the river flowing and the sound of that, and I'm looking at the horses across in the field, and next minute a plane is going over my head that I can't see. And I actually thought of a journey, and I thought of grow, and I thought about we're all on a journey. We're all on that plane that's above my head. We're all going from A to B. There's so many different uh, thoughts and feelings on that plane. There's people feeling happy, they're going to meet a loved one. There's people feeling sad, they probably left a loved one, you know. There's people feeling anxious, there's people afraid, there's people crying maybe, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like in the grow group, we're all on that plane, we're all going from A to B, and the point is we're all going in the same direction.
Yeah.
No matter how good or how bad you're feeling, we're all heading the same way. And that's what I would call and sum up grow as we're all going on a same journey, and we're all in it together, you know?
Yeah. Very good. And it is that thing of not feeling like you're completely on your own in your thoughts.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah.
and I know I read somewhere, I think in one of probably the program book or one of those books, that if you're sometimes your perception of what's going on can be tainted by how you feel at a given particular time. And if you air it in a group of people and they have different perspectives, then you start questioning, well, maybe they have a point. And it's just that kind of outward view, isn't it, that somebody else can have on your situation, because the emotion isn't
Yeah.
as involved in the decision.
It's the looking forward. You might be feeling terrible today, and someone like me saying, you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably falling apart inside, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you're in that minefield. But yet, there's someone there in grow to say, well, don't go left, go right.
Yeah.
How do you know? Because I went left before and it wasn't a good place. That's why I'm saying to you, go right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I read somewhere else that, you know, that Grow Mental Health can give you like a roadmap to more positive mental health. And that's kind of what you're saying. It's like a roadmap out of different situations that we can
Yeah,
lead each other on.
that's what we're doing in Grow. We're giving you the map
Yes.
and the compass that you'll find your way and you'll get to the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And I remember doing training in the military, and there was one day on a course we had to go over two mountains, and it was the hardest thing physically I ever done in my life.
Wow.
And the one thing that sticks in my mind is when I got to the top of the mountain, the 5 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever we had up there, and I took the time for some reason to look around me. And I looked at the beauty that was out there before me from the top of the mountain. And I carry that with me in my head all the time. That's a thought I carry.
Yeah.
That I struggled to get up to the mountain. I struggled with a backpack and with everything else, the load I was carrying. But I got there. I took the time to look around me. And I still do that to this day, no matter where I go. And in
Yeah.
nature, I find that's that was my connection.
Wow. And that brings me on, I suppose, to the this series of interviews that we're doing are about the 12-step program within that Grow Mental Health use. And we've already done step 1 and step 2, and now we're here today to talk about step 3. And I suppose that connection that you're talking about there leads us in very nicely to step 3, and about how you, I suppose, have used step 3 in your own recovery, and when would you have felt that became part of you seeing beyond yourself, I suppose?
Well, I surrender to the mystery of life, love, stroke God, and like life is a mystery.
Mhm.
Uh, and I suppose I think, as I was saying earlier, when I come out of start coming out of the depths of depression and despair and wanting to die, and then I was searching for meaning in life, and I found myself going back to nature,
Yeah.
and I found myself connecting in nature with myself, with my inner being, and I think that was a great help, that I made the connection, because like in nature we have everything. We have the beauty, we have the stillness, we have the sounds, we have it all.
Mhm.
And it's simplicity. And all it costs is the will to go. That's all it costs.
Yeah.
Walking, you don't have to, we're going to be faced into another uh, part of this pandemic where we're probably going to be restricted in how far we can go. So we say we're going to be restricted to the 5 kilometers again.
Yeah.
And in the 5 kilometers that I'm restricted in, that's where I'm going to be. Not all the time now, but I'm in nature. I'll find my peace like I did before. I'll find calmness. I'll find stillness. I'll find beauty. You know,
Yeah.
and I think that's a connection that I made. I tapped into my inner being. I made a connection with the higher power, the higher self. God, if you want to call it.
Mm.
And I think something is very important too when it comes to grow,
Mm.
is that The word God should not be misunderstood in that, oh, where, um, we say, use the word a Catholic organization, you know, far from it, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone is welcome in Grow.
Yeah.
The door is open to everybody. And it's like the coronavirus. It doesn't choose whether you're religious or non-religious or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Mental illness doesn't choose.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter
No.
what religion you are, how you think of the world. It will still instill on all walks of life. Doesn't matter how rich or how poor you are. Mental illness is still the same, no matter who it affects.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never say to anyone that would be suffering from mental illness, pull yourself together, uh, cop on or get a grip,
Yeah.
And
Seamus, is that what makes that group so special? That when
yeah,
you walk into that room where the outside world don't understand and may say things all the time like pull yourself together, the people in the room of a Grow support meeting, they know not to say that. Is that the essence of it nearly?
yeah, because we all have experienced, uh, the feelings of mental illness, uh, be it depression, anxiety, whatever, you know.
Mm.
Uh, so we're more aware of another person's feelings, and especially a new person coming in the door who's probably totally lost in their life, in their world, in everything. And if you were to say, "Oh, for God's sake, will you pull yourself together?" You know, it's not a nice thing.
No.
Yeah,
And it's just never that easy. If it was that easy, we wouldn't be here discussing this morning.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And again, no one says that you're not going to be fixed the first night, your first meeting. You know, like it is a journey, but you've taken the first step by coming through the door. You've got on the plane with everybody, and you're taking your seat, and you're going to enjoy it. And I would think, it's a positive thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, there is a social aspect to Grow, like the national weekends,
Mm-hmm.
which are absolutely brilliant. Everyone goes to those national weekends and comes away and say, God, that was brilliant,
Yeah.
When someone comes through the door for the first time and they're there the first week and they're always encouraged to come back, that's all they're asked at the first meeting.
Mm-hmm.
We'd love to see you next week. And then 6 months down the road, you can't get rid of them.
And I suppose it is that they've then become the 6 months down the road person who sees somebody back where they were 6 months ago coming in the door, and they've transformed into the listening ear or the person who can give advice as opposed to the lost.
It's one of the testaments I say about Grow. Like I've been in the voluntary sector for since the late 80s.
Okay.
And in Grow, what I noticed about Grow was that we tend to stay in it,
Yes.
after we heal and we become better. The tendency is to stay in it, and it actually amazes me
Yeah.
to see that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Grow 30 years,
Yeah.
really, yeah. And like when you hear that, and I'm in Grow 10 years, and
Yeah.
you know, and that's what I discovered, that people stayed on to help the others coming in the door. I
It's
think
almost a volunteer role then, isn't it? It's you're the wisdom of the program. That's your life and your lived experience. And when,
yeah,
even from listening to you speak, Seamus, there's when you say that you, at the worst period in your life, you struggled to know what your purpose was, and now being that person 6 years on, that
yeah,
seems to be your purpose. So it's yeah, you've
I'm fully convinced,
yeah.
you
And
know.
a difficult question for you now, Seamus, but if you had to sum up Grow mental health and the support, the peer support,
Yeah,
what would one word be that you would have for that whole experience?
one word. The longest word I can think of in my head as you ask that question is supercalifragilistic. And I'll shorten that to journey.
Journey, your
Yeah,
journey. Yeah,
because we're all on the one journey. And
that's
we're
really
all
good.
on the journey to positive mental well being. And we're all helping one another. So, yeah, journey would be the word. You know, the world isn't perfect. Nobody is perfect. But the world is also beautiful. And so is everybody else.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that's what I see.
We just
You
have
know?
to stop and notice, take the time to notice.
Yeah. I used to say to the Cub Scouts when I had them out when I was a Cub Scout leader, you know, when you're out in nature, stop, look, and listen. And maybe in our lives, in our own lives, maybe we should do that too. And especially when we're not feeling well
Yeah,
mentally.
yeah,
Stop, look, and listen. You know, listen to how you're feeling.
yeah,
Have a look at that, you know.
yeah,
And if you find you're going, you know, in in a into a bad place, well, do something to stop it. Reach out.